Right, I should be rolling. First things first, thanks for taking the time to come and speak to us. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Glad to be here.
And like I said, I was just saying then, normally I would go straight back to the start of how you got into strongman and stuff, but obviously I just seen your story then on MS, and I normally ask how's it going. So I think it's kind of appropriate to touch on that. It's something I didn't know you struggled with. And like I was saying, as much as you're a competitor to me, I'm also a big supporter as well. So tell us a little bit about dealing with MS and strongman.
Well, it's one of those things. I think I've made it. I've brought it up a couple of times ever since I started strongman. Basically, in the lead up to my first ever strongman competition, which was Scotland's, what was that, two and a half years ago, I basically had to stop going to the gym altogether for about 6 weeks. Basically because the way it came on that time was if it got aggravated, I pretty much lost the use of my right leg altogether. So if it got aggravated, I couldn't even really walk on it at all. Never mind do anything in the gym, which stress and things like that, which obviously going to the gym and stuff is putting stress on your body, can cause it to be aggravated. Fortunately, I've not had any big issues with it since then. Just kind of little mild ones that I kind of live with day to day, which can be anything from numbness to fatigue. You can get some weakness through it, but the main issues I usually have is maybe a little bit of numbness, and fatigue is probably the main issues. But after, I think it was about 2 weeks after Europe's, which I was probably quite fortunate that I managed to get through Europe's before it kind of kicked off again. I've basically had an issue where it's as if my strength has just took a massive dip. Dip's probably the wrong word. It's like I'm almost back to square one almost. When it seems to be playing up, my right arm seems to be what's mainly affected this time. Like my right arm can go numb and I can still use it, but it goes numb and it feels really weak, and then obviously I can feel weak in my whole body, but my arm can basically play up 10-15 times a day, and it's just random. But I've been fortunate that I've managed to at least get some decent training sessions in, and again it's like I'll get like 2 or 3 training sessions in that are decent, and I'll think, right, thank fuck that's it, passed kind of thing. And then this week, it's Monday and Tuesday, has just been basically an absolute shambles by what I would expect. And it's hard to stay motivated, but as much as I don't like posting things and making it seem like I'm making excuses, I feel like posting about the MS and the struggles with it is something I should do, because there is other people out there who have it, who maybe feel like they can't go to the gym or things like that, and if they somehow manage to stumble across the fact that I've got MS and I'm still managing to get by my day-to-day life, I'm still managing to even compete at a high level, then you never know, it might motivate some people.
I seen after Europe's you kind of went a bit quiet with your training.
Yep.
Was that due to the MS or just not feeling it? Because I go through a stage after every comp. I always do it where I take a huge drop off in focus and motivation, and it seems to take me a long time to come out of it. And when I'd seen you wasn't posting much, I thought, I wonder if he has the same. But was it in fact the MS keeping you from being motivated?
Unfortunately, yeah, it was pretty much the MS. Basically after every comp, I usually struggle. I usually plan on taking a week, no gym, to just kind of relax and kind of take a step back. But usually after about 3 or 4 days, I'm just kind of dying to get back into the gym, get back into it, and just start working towards the next thing. But I got back in, done wee bits and bobs the first week, and then I think it was in the second week started trying to kind of, because I was going to be going for the axle record, started trying to get back into it, and I just noticed that it was as if like, I was just struggling with things that I shouldn't be struggling with weights that I shouldn't be struggling with, like things that would normally be like warm up weights for me were all of a sudden like I was actually having to put in a decent amount of effort just to be able to do it. And then as a result, it was like my motivation took a massive dip, and it just, I wasn't posting because I didn't feel like, it's one of the things, I didn't feel like I had anything worthy of posting, really. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I ended up, I took a bit of time off. I think I took about a month off the gym altogether due to it, to kind of see if it would sort itself, and then tried to get back into it. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have went away yet.
Is there any like help that you could get, or like anything that sort of manages it, or do you just have to, something that you just have to deal with and it comes and goes as it pleases?
Well, the kind I've got is called relapse and remission, which basically means it can go away for like an indefinite amount of time, and then it can just rear its head again. So I'll always have it, and it will always come and go. The only thing you can do is get put on medication that sort of slows the progression of it, so it can slow it down from getting much worse, basically. At the moment, I'm not on any medication for it, as like, I've had the discussion with the neurologist and stuff, because I don't have issues that often, like serious issues with it too often, and the side effects of the kind of medication that you go on can be really quite bad. Like, there's one of them, probably one of the ones that I've seen is the most effective. It's like an injection every 2 weeks, but one of the side effects that's pretty much guaranteed is for about 2 to 3 days after your injection, you'll basically have flu-like symptoms where you'll pretty much just be floored with the flu. And it's like, basically I would need to try and stop it potentially getting worse, pretty much give myself the flu for 3 days every 14. And it's like, to me, I'm not quite at a level where I feel like it's worth putting myself through some of the side effects of the medications I can get yet. But it's something that once it progresses, I'll have no choice. I'll need to get on to try and slow it down.
Hopefully it gets you through. You can get through to Worlds on 100%, because it'll be obviously a shame to not see you perform as we know you can perform. So I'll rewind it back now to see what Chris was like before strongman. So you're pretty new to the sport, aren't you? As am I, actually. I'm only a year or so behind you. But what did you do before strongman?
Well, for years I had played football, so I'd get into the gym pretty much just to, it was more about just kind of staying in shape and maybe adding a wee bit of strength that would help with the football. But I think it was probably what most people get into the gym for. It was trying to look a wee bit better, and kind of when you're away on nights out, just like you think you've got a wee bit of size about you probably back then, even though you didn't really. But for years that was kind of just my focus. It was your usual kind of sort of bodybuilding style workouts, no real focus on anything in particular. I would say, I mean, I've trained probably since I was about 18, so that's about 14 years now. It's probably only really been the last 4.5 years that I started kind of training with a purpose, and initially it was with a view of going into powerlifting. I kind of set a target of wanting to kind of go for the Scottish record, for the Scottish total record in the IPF, and initially that's what I was working towards. And pretty much as I got pretty close to it, the gym owner that I train in, Hostile, Martin, he had for probably about 6 months odd, every now and again just kind of nagged me a wee bit about trying strongman, and I always just kind of turned around to him and I was like, nah, I'm not really interested in it. Not the now. I'll do the powerlifting first, and then I'll maybe see you afterwards. And then it was pretty much one of the times in the gym, him and one of his pals was giving me a hard time about it again, trying to convince me to try strongman, and I pretty much just answered with, if I say yes and sign up for it, will you leave me alone? And then that's pretty much been it from then. I signed up for the competition. I think I had about 3 odd months to prep for it, and that's been it. The first comp I signed up for was Scotland's Strongest Man, and it's just went from there.
Did you?
Yeah. I ended up winning it, which, to be honest, in the lead up to the comp, it was like I almost pulled out a couple of times because I was like, I'm not ready for this sort of level of comp. Didn't think I was like of the standard to be able to be doing like a national level comp, considering I'd only really took it up and actually touched the implements for the first time like 3 months prior. But obviously it went a lot better than I expected and ended up winning.
Well, my next question was gonna be then, did you know you had the ability when you started to reach the levels you've got to now? Could you see you being up there at the top, or was that just not even a consideration?
I don't think at that point I did, but over the next few months after that, when I was preparing for Brits, I ended up, it's like I realised I was getting a lot better and I was picking up things quite quickly. But even still, like when I went into my first Brits, my target was pretty much, I think there was like 14 people competing in it. My target was basically finish top 10. And I ended up podiuming. I ended up getting a third place, which was absolutely mental. Probably what I view as one of my better achievements, because it was one of the competitions that I went into really not expecting to come anywhere close to that, whereas everything since then I've sort of had a certain expectation I've put on myself. But I think it was after coming third in that, which I finished ahead of some big names who have competed at Worlds and stuff, so it kind of made me realise obviously I'm at a level where I can go and compete at these massive competitions.
So looking back at the Chris back then, only 2.5 years ago, to the Chris now, what would you say like are the main changes that you've changed as an athlete between the two times? Like the main progressions?
Well, I don't know, there's a lot of confidence that's came with it. I feel like I've got a lot more, probably taking it a lot more serious, like actually making sure to put in the work on all the extras that come with it, not just kind of focusing on the main things, but obviously got to start focusing on your eating, you've got to focus on your recovery, you've like all those kind of things. It's pretty much just the main differences have been taking it more seriously and trying to improve every aspect of training instead of just focusing primarily on like your main lifts kind of thing.
It literally becomes your life, doesn't it? Like
it takes over your life.
Like every thought of the day is towards comp, whether it's sleep, naps, food, training, like everything. I can't go there because I've got to do this. Everything is gauged around competition. That's what I found biggest change. You're not just going to train anymore and eat well when you want to eat well. It is literally becomes your life. So it must have been a huge like change in the 2.5 years from just going to nothing to full on life changing, really.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think a lot of people don't, like, especially outside of the sport, don't quite understand it and don't quite understand why you would want to do it. And to be honest, sometimes I even wonder that myself, like why I put myself through it and why I like put other things off just for lifting weights. But for some reason, it's something we seem to enjoy and something we want to do, so we just end up putting ourselves through it.
I always say, if you try to sell the sport of strongman to someone, to an alien who had no concept of what we do, you basically lift a lot of heavy weight, more than often end up with niggles. You diet for 3, 4, 5 months or whatever, you're either a deficit or maintenance. You give up social time. You have hissy fits in the gym. You sweat, blood, tears, to competition day where you probably work for about 4 minutes total, maximum really. And sometimes you just get a t-shirt at the end of it and you pay your own money to get there, and you can come away with just a t-shirt, and then you look at doing it all again. It just wouldn't sell as a sport, but for some reason we love it.
It sounds like, just when you lay it out like that, it sounds absolutely terrible, doesn't it?
It's bonkers, isn't
but
it?
For some reason, for the like 46 minutes that we probably spend actually doing the events and the competition, it seems to just keep us coming back for more for some reason, and I've not quite figured out why, but for some reason I can't seem to pull myself away from it either.
What I really like now, like going down the pathways, is it's like a reunion at every comp. Like we obviously like talk little bits, but like amongst on Instagram, do you know what I mean? The odd message to other athletes and stuff like that, and then comp time, it's like a little reunion, because you pretty much know every athlete, or you might make a new mate at each competition, or a couple of people networking and stuff. But that's kind of why I think it's another good thing. It's a social sport, isn't it?
It is good. For the most part, I would say a lot of the people are like really decent, really supportive, and very easy to get on with. And then, as you say, when you get to go to comps and you get to actually spend a wee bit of time with the people that you probably only talk to every now and again online, and you're probably watching their content that they're putting up every day or every week. So it is good getting to actually see these people and spend a bit of time talking to them face to face for once.
Yeah. So when you first got into the sport then, did you have a few athletes that sort of inspired you, or you looked up to at like the higher level?
To be honest, at first, probably not really. I kind of just get into it, and like, there was certain names that kind of get flung about. Obviously, being from Scotland and going to be competing in the under-80s, the target at the time was obviously at Scottish level was Dean. He was obviously one of the best under-80s regardless, but he was obviously the best under-80 in Scotland, and he was the kind of name that get flung about. So initially I would have looked probably quite a lot at the kind of training he was doing, the numbers he was kind of flinging about, and that was sort of possibly a bit of a target, was can I get to a level where I can compete against that. But as I said, Brits was probably the first time I realised that I can compete at that sort of level. Probably, he would say himself, probably didn't have one of his best comps that year. I think he was struggling with a few things outside of strongman, but I ended up finishing, I think it was like half a point ahead of him or something, to finish third and get the podium. And obviously, what would that have been, 20, was that 22? 2022. So that would have been around about, I think it was July, August time in 2022, Brits was held. And but the fact I managed to finish ahead of the guy that was who everybody spoke about in Scotland as being the main challenge, then it kind of made me realise, obviously, I can compete at whatever level I want to within this sport.
Yeah, I had Dean on last. He was one of mine that I looked up to, and it was great to have him on the other week as well. Really enjoyed that pod. And he mentioned you as one of the best that he'd competed with. So I'll ask you the same question now. You've reached the top. Have you got 3 athletes that are the best that you've competed with in your time in the sport?
Well, I think one of the obvious answers is Dean. He's probably one of the people I've competed against most at the kind of top competitions. Obviously, last year at Europe's, he's one of the few people who have actually managed to finish above me in a competition. He's always there or thereabouts at pretty much every single comp, so he is definitely right up there as one of the best. I'd say one of the other ones is, I think I actually saw on your podcast, Dean said it as well, Josh. I don't even want to try and say his last name. But he finished second to me last year at Worlds. He was brilliant throughout the entire competition as well. I definitely think, I don't know 100% if he's going to be doing Worlds this year, because I've seen he's having a few issues at home with his missus and their baby that they're due to have. So, I mean, I hope he's going to be there, but if he is there, I do think he can definitely push me all the way, and he's definitely capable of winning it this year. And the other person I would say, I've only had the chance to compete against him for probably really half a competition now, but from what I've seen, I feel like he's probably right up there, and that's Ricky Panganiban.
I thought you'd say him, yeah.
Unfortunately, he tore his bicep on the deadlift ladder last year, but if he didn't, I genuinely think he would have potentially pushed me all the way. Like last year I ended up winning quite comfortably, but I think if he didn't end up having to pull out, I do think he would have pushed me all the way, and it would have been fairly close, because he looked very solid on pretty much everything.
Yeah. He did the first event on the overhead. He got through as well. I can't remember if he got that last, or it was he either got it or it was timed out on the.
I was the only one that got the block.
You was the only one.
So I think there was a few got to it, and a few came close-ish.
Yeah, I got to it. There was eight of us.
Out.
8 of us got to it, which shows how hard that yoke was. It was ridiculous.
Oh, the yoke was insane.
Yeah.
Like,
out of 40 of the athletes, there was literally 8 of us that got that, which shows you.
Like, trained it a lot in training, and it felt easy. Even tried to make it wobbly in training, it felt easy. Through the back, they had one that was similar to it, and that felt easy. But then that one that was out there was just something else. It just shook so much.
Yeah, you literally just had to touch it, didn't it? And it sort of leant forward, and then that was it. Then as soon as you pressed, the legs would swing, and then you'd be off balance straight away.
I was kind of glad
I
was kind of glad they made it clear that as long as you had it locked out for like a second, they didn't really care 100% whether you were like completely steady with it.
Yeah.
They would give you the down command, because if you had to be completely steady with it, then I don't think I would even get past it. I had it locked out. Sorry, I had it locked out, but it definitely was nowhere near steady when I got my down command. But thankfully, that was the kind of ruling they went with, which they did say beforehand. So, kind of got away with that one, I think.
Yeah, there was a lot of big names that got stuck on it, which like Ben Donnan, I don't think Ben got it, and he went out before me, and when I seen he didn't get it, I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good.
I think unfortunately Ben had a really bad first day on that comp.
Yeah.
Otherwise I think he would have been closer as well, but that's the kind of risks you take when you've got the bigger the cut you've got to do, I suppose. Like the likes of
he has a heavy cut, I'd heard. Yeah.
Me and yourself both know like kind of what it's like to be cutting down from above 90, and there's not many under 80s that kind of know what that's like, so it definitely does take its toll, but it's just how well you can handle it, and I don't think he handled it too well, unfortunately, for the first day.
How do you feel about the cutting thing? Because sometimes I feel, see, I filmed my whole 10 days out, more so for me and Steph to look back on and be like, what the hell did we used to do? Do you know what I mean? I thought it would be an interesting thing for us to sort of film what we did, and then in years to come look back and think, what the fuck are we doing? And so a lot of it then was like the actual taking the water out, so whatever we've got left, we obviously have to remove in sweat, and we each have our own protocols for that. But then when I speak about it, sometimes I feel like I don't want to tell people how big my cut is, because they'll be like, well, he only does well because he's a bigger athlete and he cuts right down to this. And I know you're obviously a big cutter. So how do you feel when you tell people, like, or what do you think people think about sort of basically a 90s athlete, 90s kg walking around cutting down?
To be honest, doesn't really bother me. It's like, to me, it's I've gave myself one extra challenge for the competition than a lot of them have got, because because I've been able to fill out the weight classes, I would call it. I've basically kind of got myself, I've built the muscle, built the strength, and I've got myself to a level where I've literally put on as much weight as I can to be able to still get myself down to under 80 for a weigh-in. Everybody's obviously got the option of doing it. Not everybody's capable of doing it. But it's like, I wouldn't say necessarily like it will give some advantages if you do it right and if you do it well, because as we all know, you'll go back into the competition after you've done your refeed, you'll be sitting probably somewhere 86, between 86 and 90 kilo if you've come down for like 90 kilo odd, and you're going to have an advantage over maybe guys that always sit around about 80. But it's like, I'm nowhere near one of the tallest under 80 athletes, so it's like, when you think about it, if you've got a guy who's 3 or 4 inches taller than me and he's just sitting around about 81, 82, he has the ability to fill out that weight class just as much as I do. So the way I see it is, they're just missing out on an opportunity that's there for them. Do I think it's right? Probably not. Maybe going to same day weigh-ins and we all have to just compete in the weight class we probably should be in would be better. But while the option's there, it's like any sport, you take advantage of whatever you can. And if you want to be the best in the sport, you're going to take advantage at every single aspect of it that you're allowed to.
Yeah. I agree. 'Cause obviously, I do it myself, and I think it's a rule, and we adhere to it. So it's not cheating because it's part of the rules. Like we get down to that weight for weigh-in, and that's what it is. Like you said, everyone has the option to put the weight on if they want to. It comes with disadvantages to us too when we're. Like, I find sometimes day one, if it's a 2-day comp, I am a little bit off. But day 2, then I'm fully pretty much recovered and I feel a lot better day 2. But like at England's day 1, I didn't feel 100%, and my cut was probably maybe a little bit too big. But that's the risk I take, and someone who doesn't do a bigger cut could be at 100%. So yeah. I think it's just weighing up the balance of it. Do you take the risk? Do you take the gamble?
I would say I've been quite fortunate that I wouldn't say I usually lose much, if any, performance even going into the first day. Well, so far I know that if I kind of diet myself down to the between 87 and 88 range, that I can do like a 7 and a bit kilo water cut, no bother, and it doesn't really affect my performance. It would only really be beyond that. But I mean, for Europe's, I think I ended up, it was about an 8.5 kilo water cut I done, and it still didn't feel overly too bad. The next day still felt as if I was probably at least about 90 to 95% of what I should be, so I can't really I obviously get a big benefit out of it, but as you say, it's up to other athletes to kind of weigh up whether they think it's worth it or whether they think they can do it, because you'll know yourself, it's not exactly a fun thing.
No, I think it affects people differently as well. Like mine was, I'll ask you about your protocol in a second, but mine literally, like in the little video I did, 10 days out I was still 90 kilogram. 7 days out, sorry, I was still 90 kilogram, and then I literally almost starved myself for a few days, do me water loading, and then I'm left with about 7 kilograms of water to lose. But because I've already depleted myself a few days before, I'm already feeling the effects of that, and then I've got to shed the water. And I'd say for the first 3.5, 4 kilograms, I feel quite sprightly, quite alive, do you know what I mean? I can crack a joke and I'm alright. But then the last 2 kilograms, like if Steph asks me a question, a simple question like, do you want this or this? I'm like, I get so annoyed that I've been asked a question and I'm in this state, and I'm like, just pick it for me. Like I really struggle in the last couple of kilograms, whereas when obviously you said then, and I've spoke to other people and they're like, oh yeah, easy, do you know what I mean? But I struggle with it. So I don't know how you find it. Are you fine, or do you get a bit ratty when you get down to the depth?
It's always the last 2 kilos. The last 2 kilos, just they all, no matter what, they never feel like they want to come off.
No.
Everything starts to go a hell of a lot slower. I'm probably the same as yourself. The fuse sort of disappears. There is no fuse anymore. It's not even a short one. It's just everything can annoy you. Everything feels like effort. Like even simple conversations can just feel like a lot of effort that you just don't want to put in. And then obviously you're still having to get yourself, let's say, in and out of baths, which by that point, even that can be fucking so difficult. Like, it isn't usually too bad. It's by the time you're trying to get back out of it, like sometimes you end up, you're needing help to get out of it, and it's like, you think to yourself, like, what am I doing? Like, you're literally pretty much killing yourself just to try and make weight for a competition. But thankfully, like yourself, I've got a missus that's really supportive of it all, and like the day I'm doing a water cut, she will deal with everything. Like, obviously we've got the 2 kids, like she will make sure I have nothing to think about that day. If the kids have got to go get ready to go over to grandparents, like to stay with them, because we're going away, let's say the comp's down in England or the comp's abroad, whatever, she, as I said, she deals with absolutely everything. Doesn't ask me to help with anything, doesn't expect me to help with anything. Honestly, I'm ridiculously thankful for it. And then later on that night, when I'm at the last couple of kilos, she'll constantly check up on me. She'll come in, she'll help me if I need, let's say I'm needing help getting out of the bath, or needing help with like somebody forcing me to get back into it because I don't want to get back into it. Like, she'll do it all, and it's definitely, it would be a lot, I do think it would be a lot harder to do it all without that sort of support there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your support, like, because like when we do it, I generally, like, openly admit I couldn't get down to that weight without Steph at all, because she literally does everything for me. Like, she will not sit down that whole day, whether it's bringing me an ice cube. So we have this protocol where I'm in the bath to raise my temperature, and at first I can last 20 minutes, and then as time goes on, I'm down to about 4 minutes because I just cannot sit in a hot bath. It's really hard
to stay in it for even a couple of minutes, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then when I come out of that, I'll go and get wrapped up, so she'll wrap me up in loads of towels, throws, anything we can put on over the head, everything. And I have a sweatsuit, so I'll put that on first, then wrap up, and I feel it drips off me. And once I'm laid down, I can sit in that for like 40 minutes and I can feel it rolling off me, and it's fine. But as time gets on, like, sometimes we'll try and go between 10 p.m. and 12 before we try and get a couple of hours sleep. Round that time, and then especially when I start again about 5 a.m, I can't even get out of the bath. Like, I generally cannot get out of it, and I film this part of it, and it still doesn't show the amount that she helps, because she's also up at 5 running the bath for me. Once I'm in the bath, she's like, bit of ice, then gets me out. I can't even like dry myself. She dries me. That's how harsh it hits me at that stage. I'm literally so gone. I just feel like I have no energy. She'll walk me back, put my suit on for me, so lifts me leg up, put me, like, that's how, honestly, it's so bad. Wraps me right up, and then we'll go and drain the bath, restart the bath again, come back, do a knee out, blah blah blah. Doesn't sit down, then takes me back, dries all the towels, or puts them to start drying, puts me back in the bath, then goes off, does the other stuff. sets all the bed up again for me. Like, do you need that type of help? Because that's the stage I'm at where I'm like,
I don't think I'm quite as bad as you. I can still, for
you
the
must be
most
doing
part,
something wrong.
I can still, for the most part, do like things myself. It's more especially towards the end, I can maybe need help getting out the bath, and like I can still wrap myself up and stuff like that. But I think it's more. Obviously, she does occasionally need to help me climb in or out, but apart from that, it's more the emotional and mental support that I end up
Yeah.
needing. Like the amount of times I'm sitting there, and especially like around about maybe the last kilo, I can be like 100% convinced in my mind that there is no way I'm getting back into that bath, and like there's nothing that can convince me to get back into it because I just feel terrible. And it's like the minute I get back into it, you can feel your heart, like you can feel your heart beating. Like obviously, the more you sweat out, the thicker your blood ends up being, the more work your heart needs to do to pump the blood around your body, stuff like that. Like you can actually feel it. You can feel the fact you're breathless. You struggle to just do simple things like breathing, and it's like it does take a mental toll that I don't think a lot of people that maybe only do a small water cut probably think it's not too bad. Like I've heard people doing like 3 and 4 kilo water cuts and talk about how horrible it is, and I can't help but think in my head like you have no idea how bad it can be kind of thing. But I think thankfully you are a bit bigger than me, so obviously it's going to be that little bit harder for you, and as you're saying, it definitely sounds as if you've got it a bit worse than I do as well.
Yeah, everyone I speak to, no one's like, yeah, mate, we're not at that level. Like, we're either doing something wrong or I just really struggle, but I honestly cannot, like, do anything for myself. And that's why she always like, you're not doing another one, are you? Because she's knackered after it all the time, literally does not stop. Is like, you know, when you're that dehydrated, you can't sleep, can you? Your body's obviously like, come on, get up, go and get some water. So you just can't sleep, so you're up and you think, well, I might as well crack on with the bath, so I'll have to get her up, and we crack on with the baths at like 3 a.m. or whatever.
There's nothing worse, because you know that if you could get some sleep, a wee bit more of the weight would come off, because it's just what your body does when you're sleeping. But as you say, because you're that dehydrated, it's as if your body just refuses to let you sleep. You might be able to get like short stints here and there, but again, your body will wake you back up as if it's obviously looking for you to go and hydrate yourself, but you basically respond to it by going and getting in another bath, which it's not fun. I always say to people that ask me about it, I would not recommend it to anybody unless you are trying to compete at a very decent level. Then just go up a weight class and enjoy it. Avoid the cuts until you're at a level where you're competing at a competition that you think is worth it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you actually. What advice would you give to people coming into the sport? Because you must have obviously a lot of aspiring strongman and novice and beginners now following you. And what advice would you give them to getting into the sport? Maybe going into the first competition.
The best advice you can really give anybody getting into the sport is just try and, especially initially, just try and enjoy it. Don't put any like pressures on yourself to try and. It's probably I didn't really probably listen to my own advice, but don't put any extra pressures on yourself to, oh, I need to get to that level, I want to get to that level. When you're first starting, just have fun with it. Learn. There's so many different things to learn, so many different like implements that you've got different techniques to learn on, and just like take your time, get a coach who will make the whole process a lot easier, and then the best thing you can do is once you've been probably training it for a little bit and you feel like you're getting comfortable on some of the implements, just enter competitions. It can be first time ones, novices, but again, go into it to enjoy it. Don't go into it with any like big expectations on yourself. Like, if you can just go into a comp and you have fun and you might hit 1 or 2 PBs in comparison to your training, then it's a good day, and it's probably the best way to enjoy the sport for longer, and then you might enjoy the sport for long enough to get to a good level. But I think nowadays that's not really what a lot of new people would do. Everybody wants everything yesterday. They want to come in and they want to be the best within, or challenge the best within 6 months, when realistically, again, I know it sounds daft because it's pretty much something I've done, but it's not possible for probably 99% of people. You need to take the time to put in the work and like build the strength and build the techniques and all that. So you've just got to kind of enjoy the process more than anything.
How important would you say having a coach early on is for your progression and getting into strongman?
I don't think there's anything more important, really. As I said, with the fact that there's so many different things to learn, having a coach will obviously, they can give you ideas of like technical improvements on each of the implements and the way you should be doing things, the way not to do things, and probably one of the main things it will stop is you'll probably get less injuries, which if you're getting less injuries, you're going to make more progress, and if you're making more progress, you're going to enjoy it more. So I think it's definitely one of the best things I've done. As soon as I jumped into it, I think I'd done about 1 or 2 weeks training, and then I just thought, I do feel as if I could have got myself to a decent level for my first competition, but I pretty much instantly realised, like, if I want to take this seriously and try and win the competition, then the only way I'm going to be able to kind of do it is by getting a coach who knows what he's doing. Thankfully, it's pretty much been constant progression since then, and I'm still with the same coach right now. So,
who is your coach that have you got?
Callum Crozier. So, right. He's obviously up in Scotland, I think, pretty much. In fact, even in the UK, a lot of people know who he is. Like, he's competed at 90s, he's competed at 105s, and he's obviously been doing a stint in the Opens, which he unfortunately didn't do Scotland's Strongest Man this year, but last year he came second. So he is very good, like, at doing it himself, and he is actually very knowledgeable, and he'll probably slag me for the fact that I'm giving him too many compliments, but I do think without him I wouldn't be anywhere close to the level I'm at right now. I'm quite fortunate that the first coach I chose is someone who I kind of got on quite well with, and we kind of bounce off each other quite well, which I think is also really important. Like, having a coach that kind of, like, personality wise kind of goes with yourself also helps the whole process as well, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I went with Josh Lancaster. His sort of technical breakdown and the nerdy sort of data and all that. I love all that. I love the tactical side of things, and I felt like he really suited me. So I'd been with Josh for years, and I can't argue with how far we've come. He took me from my first comp to all the way to where we've been to. So yeah, I'd 100% agree with the coach getting into strongman, definitely. What about nutrition? Do you how do you find your nutrition? Do you do it yourself, or have you took someone on for that?
So up until Europe's, I just done it myself. So for the first, 2.5 years, I kind of just done things the way I've kind of always done it. I just kind of tried to keep majority of my eating kind of what it should be. Unfortunately, I do have a really bad sweet tooth, so between competitions, like cakes, biscuits, and things like that, I struggle not to overindulge. is probably the best way I can put it. Like, if I open a packet of biscuits, I'm eating the packet. It's not, I'm just going to have a couple. It's the packet's getting finished. So
I think we spoke about this, didn't we, when we were like, I say, like backstage on the last event for Europe. So we were on about what we were gonna eat after this, and what we ate after the after weigh-in as well.
yeah, aye. So it's like I do like to treat myself probably way too much in between competitions, which is probably the main reason I do end up sitting like 92 to 94 kilo kind of in between competitions. But for Worlds, I decided, because my cut was kind of a bit harder than usual, the dieting phase of my cut anyway was a bit harder than usual for Europe's. I decided to take on a nutritionist for Worlds just to kind of help as much as possible, which so far, so I took on Mike Shreds, and so far I think I'm sitting just over 88 kilos at the minute. So in the last 4 weeks or something like that, I've kind of come down from 92 to almost 88. My eating's been, it's probably as clean as my eating's ever been, but I'm not, it's not as if like I'm overly hungry throughout the day or anything. Like, I'm still eating decent amount of food and everything, but the fact that I'm like 4 weeks out from comp, 4 weeks out from weigh-in, and I'm already 88, whereas normally I would just be starting my dieting kind of roughly right now, and I'd be sitting 92 to 94. So it's like I'm already like 1 kilo away from where I'm happy to do a water cut from, and I've got 4 weeks to get there. It's definitely made the process a lot easier, and I think more than anything, it's just having someone to hold me accountable. Like, I've got a kind of nutrition program there, and it gives me something to stick to. And like, when I go to snack, I've got that thought, I can't fit that within my like today's calories kind of thing. So it's definitely helped. But
It's interesting you say, Mike, actually, because recently, like a couple of months ago, I didn't really like put it out there or anything, but I was gonna like end doing my strongman, but then I've quickly found, after only 2 months of not doing strongman, that I don't think I'm quite ready to give it up just yet. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, what's the next thing I can improve? And it was me nutrition. So recently I've just been thinking, like, I've got Mike Shreds on my Instagram, and I see he has a lot of good clients in the strongman world and 80s athletes. So I'm thinking I'm going to reach out to him. So it was interesting that you've just mentioned him there, and I'll speak to you a bit about it when we come off. But I'm glad you mentioned that then, because I'd like to get a bit more info, because that's what I want to come down. I don't want to make the cuts as harsh as they have been, because it kind of does put me off competing sometimes, when, especially if there's a couple of comps that are fairly close together. I'll pick one, and I don't want to
I'm
do
the same.
that.
Like, I get to the stage where I feel like it would be too difficult to do 2 competitions in the space of like 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, because I feel like I can't do the 2 cuts, or I basically feel like even if I'm doing the first competition and make the cut for it, it's like I won't be able to do the refeed that I would like to do, because I would be consciously trying to keep my weight within like a certain range and stuff, and it's like I feel like they would end up impacting each other. So as you said, you end up kind of sort of choosing one instead of doing both, which it's not really ideal. Preferably I would like to be able to do more comps. Like, this is only going to be my 10th comp over the course of 3 years, which there's some people do more comps than that in 1 year. So like, I would like to be able to do more, but hopefully when I move up to the 90s, it is something like I'll be able to do more comps, because I won't have obviously the pressure of having to do such massive cuts. I'll pretty much just be able to do like a smallish water cut in comparison to what I'm used to, and then that's all I need to do.
A question that I forgot to ask before, it was after the top 3 athletes, is something that annoys you in the sport. Anything, it could be anything, whether it's personalities, people, competitions, structures, whatever. What gets to you? in the sport?
Yeah, there probably is a few things, but I think one of the things I've probably been vocal with a few times over the past couple of years is definitely what seems to be the cliqueiness within the sport. I do feel like sometimes there seems to be, like, you need to be associated with certain people or a certain group of people to be able to get your name out there, to be able to get the same sort of like screen time and promotion that other athletes get, and which I feel like is completely wrong. I feel like a lot, like especially at your bigger comps, a lot of the athletes should be getting, like pretty much every athlete there deserves to be getting a decent amount of screen time. They're all like some of the best athletes in the world. They're all putting in the exact same effort. They're all killing themselves day in, day out. But sometimes it definitely feels like there's only certain people will get the interviews. There's only certain people that will get their stuff reposted. Like, and obviously for the sport, your stuff getting reposted by some of the bigger pages is how you get more followers, and then the getting more followers is how you get sponsorships and stuff. And for some people, getting kit sponsorships can be humongous for them. It can help them a lot within the sport. It could help them get other sponsorships, which might be able to help them, like if they're able to get like a monetary sponsorship that can help them go to some of the bigger comps. Because let's face it, it's something else I've been vocal about, which pisses me off a bit, is how much it can cost to be able to do the big comps. But yeah, I just wish it's something. It still annoys me, even though I'm starting to get more screen time and more reposts. But I feel like I had to win worlds to do that, and I don't feel like it should take that, because there's so many brilliant athletes out there who work just as hard as me. They might even work harder than me, and they deserve to have their training reposted. They deserve to have like a wee bit of screen time to get their personality out there and stuff like that. But I do understand it's one of the things that not everybody, there's not enough time in the world to get everybody as much as they maybe deserve. But sometimes it can be frustrating when you see people who haven't even competed in the sport for quite a few years still getting used in the promotional posters and stuff. And I don't think I even need to say names within that for everybody to know what I'm meaning. Like, I've got no issue with the person I'm talking about that gets used in the promotional pictures. I actually quite like him, and I do get on with him when I speak to him, but I think even he would probably say himself, it's mad that other people aren't getting used more often. Like people that finished top 10 at Worlds, or people that finished really highly at Europe's last year, why are they not the ones that are getting used for all the promotional content for Europe's this year? Do you know what I mean? It's like, to me, that's who should be getting promoted, and their faces should be getting pushed out there more. But it's just one of the things I hope can get better. And if I'm honest, I do feel as if it's getting slightly, maybe ever so slightly better, but it's definitely something that can still be improved upon, I think.
Did you do like a bit of a breakdown of cost? Did you put that on your story? Have I seen that from you? A bit of a breakdown of the cost of getting to Worlds and what you'd actually take home for being a winner of World's Strongest Man.
Yeah, so I put down the breakdown. It was basically, they had sent out an email, and it was to buy your spectator tickets, and then they also added in an extra one this year, which was for a coach's pass, which you never had to do that last year. Every athlete got one coach pass last year for the coach to come through the back with you. So basically when they brought that out, I think the cheapest spectator ticket, which I had no problem with that, it was like $150 for the weekend. To me, that's acceptable for 3 days worth of competition. But you then had the coach's pass was like £40 or £50, so what's that, about $70. You then take into consideration every athlete has to pay $280. It was $280 this year to sign up for the competition, which to me is a bit madness. And I would even say, like, why can't, for a minimum at least, I might sound as if I'm trying to make a case for myself here, but I would say this regardless of whether I'd won it last year or not. At a minimum, the winner from last year shouldn't have to be paying an entry. And for me, you could even go as far as saying the podium from last year shouldn't really have to pay an entry. Like, there should be some sort of extra reward to encourage the best athletes from each weight class to come back next year. You want the champion to come back next year. You don't want the champion to be priced out and then not be able to at least try and defend his title. But you then add on everything else on top of that, your flights, accommodation, food while you're out there. And when I done the breakdown, I think last year it worked out just under £3,000 I took home, and I easily spent a minimum of £4,000 while I was for the whole competition. So it's, even winning the competition, you're still down £1,000, which again, I'm probably privileged that I'm in a position where I can afford it. Like, I can afford to even be £1,000 down, but there's a lot of people that can't afford to even be £1,000 down for a competition, never mind potentially being £4,000 down. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I think it's something that probably does need to get better as well. I definitely think the athletes deserve more prize money. It's been proven by the likes of Chaos and stuff that there is ways to get decent prize money for the athletes, and if Chaos can do it for the likes of Brits and for their own classic, then why can't the biggest organisation do it for the athletes? And then, yeah, it's just, even I think they need to look at maybe even potentially changing Worlds away from America, maybe even like once every 3 years. I understand it's an American organisation, but bring it over to somewhere in Europe. I'm not even meaning the UK, like somewhere in Europe. Bring it over here. It would allow, let's say, some of the Eastern European guys that maybe can't afford to go to America for the competition. It would allow some of them to come in, and there might even be some absolutely mental athletes there that are fucking actually way better than all of us that are competing at Worlds, but we don't know because they can't afford it. So I would like to see the opportunity for like other athletes to get the chance that maybe can't afford to do it, and we would get a more real view of who the best is rather than the best of who can afford it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was one of the reasons, like one of a couple of reasons that I won't be going myself this year is cost. It's unfortunate, and I don't really know the answer because we don't know the ins and outs of the business, but it would be nice if there was some way of improving it, and I've heard that said before about even just could they move it to Europe, or would they consider it, or come out with an answer of why. And it could shut us up if they'd be like, look, we can't because of this. But
it's I understand logistically getting all the equipment to places can be difficult, but it would be nice if they could at least sort of, it could maybe be tried. I mean, I can understand that Europe's is held in the UK quite a lot because they then borrow the equipment off of Giants, but surely there's a way to, through sponsors, through other organisations that they could team up with for a way for them to get like the equipment out to some of these European countries, and just, as I said, allow more people access to the competition.
Yeah, definitely. So with Worlds last year, tell me about winning World's Strongest Man. How did that feel?
That was a bit surreal, to be honest. It's one of the things, I think, going into the competition, deep down, I knew I was capable of winning it, and I would probably always tell myself I was capable of winning it, but it's one of the things, I don't know if I ever really thought it would actually materialise that way. Obviously, you go into a competition, you never know what's going to happen, you never know how well you're going to do on the day, and then obviously you're at Worlds, you're up against a lot of athletes that you've never competed against before, so there is a lot of unknowns. But obviously, for me, it was probably a competition that couldn't have really went much better. There was probably a couple of events I could have improved on slightly, but there was also a couple of events that I done probably slightly better on than I thought I was going to. So it was just probably technically a perfect 3 days for me that just went as well as it could, and then I ended up standing at the top of that podium, and it's still one of the things when I kind of talk about it, I still think it sounds mad to say I'm the world's strongest man, like under 80. Like, it still sounds crazy, especially considering it was within 2 years of starting the sport.
Yeah, I seen your story as well today about being in Nando's and Inverness, and Tom Stoltman was in there, and yourself. How did you find after Worlds? Like, because obviously the lightweights don't get as much spotlight, do they? So how do you feel about that? How do you think that we can get more spotlight? Because I imagine in Nando's there, everyone had been looking at him as the world's strongest man, but not know there's actually a second world's strongest man in the same restaurant.
Well, see, to be honest, I would even say, even for the likes of Tom, I'd say the vast majority of the general public, they'll look at him because of the sheer size of him. But I would say probably 80 odd % of people would not have a clue who he is or what he's done. Like, and that's at the biggest level. Unfortunately, I just don't know if on, like, across the world, strength sports as a whole are like followed and well known enough to really be technically famous to the point where like a lot of people recognise you everywhere you go, unless obviously they are particularly interested in that strength sport. But I think we are growing it, and obviously the big guys are getting more and more exposure, and then since I've started the sport, even the weight classes are getting more and more exposure. I think a lot of that's down to the hard work that some of the promoters are putting in, the likes of your Chaos and stuff. Like, they are constantly putting on massive competitions, they're live streaming it, they're trying to get it out to as many people as possible, and it is growing, but I still think we are a long way away from where any of the kind of strength sport athletes will ever be recognised in comparison to like other sports out with.
Yeah, I've noticed definitely that it is growing, isn't it? You can't sort of say it's not. It definitely is, but it is really slow, and it is a shame really, because of the sort of talent that there is in the sport, and it's not fully recognised for what it should be really. Well, we think what it should be, and it probably will be at some stage when we're well too old for it, probably, unfortunately. So I was going to ask you about the new pathway and what your thoughts were on, it's splitting from Chaos this year to Unbreakable. They had the first little spell with it. Well, they will do in February. What your thoughts were on there being a couple of different pathways now?
The more pathways there are, the better. The whole situation surrounding it, from what I've seen and what I've heard, I really don't like the way OSG seem to have went about it. Like, I think it's fair to say Chaos have been as big as anybody for promoting this sport. The improvements that's been made, as I said, even from 2 years ago, nearly 3 years ago now when I started the sport, it's changed massively. The improvements are huge. The quality of the competitions are just getting better and better every year. We're getting better quality equipment, we're getting it held in better venues, there's more athletes doing it. We're now getting better prize money and stuff, which I think a lot of that is down to the likes of Chaos, and obviously there is other promoters coming in trying to do the same thing, and I've had no dealings with the Unbreakable promotions yet, but I don't think from what I've seen they're really covering themselves in glory at the minute. Obviously there's a lot of kind of bad blood with the fact that everybody knows how much Chaos has done for the weight classes, and it seems to have just been ripped off them and given to Unbreakable. What's actually went on behind the scenes, I don't think any of us will ever know the full truth, but obviously Unbreakable had a competition at the weekend there that they were doing everything for, and I've seen all the stuff around about them being late for weigh-ins. I've seen stuff about females having to weigh in basically in an open room where everybody was, which isn't really correct in my eyes. Like, everybody should be weighing in private. Like, even at the big competitions, if they do have everybody in the same room, they still usually have curtains to block off the view for athletes to be able to strip down to their boxers or to strip down to brand pants or whatever, so that they can do their weigh-in and they're still getting the privacy. Like, there's just wee things right now that I think they need to do better. Whether they'll end up doing better, possibly, but as I said, I think it is a good thing overall that we end up with more pathways. It opens up more opportunities for athletes. It's more competitions, potentially more chances for prize money, potentially like that athletes could use to be able to go to your OSGs in America and stuff. So overall, I do think it will be good in the long run, but right now I think there is still some teething issues.
Yeah, I think there's some ironing out to do, but I think they will get there, and I'd agree. I think it's good that there's a couple of pathways, and I think it's good for athletes. You know, I although Chaos have a lot of loyalty athletes, I think even they say don't need that. They want athletes to just go and do what's best for them, and compete in whatever comp that people want to compete in, whether it's both or just one side.
Yeah, I'd say it's the one good thing I could say about Luke and Rhiannon and the dealings I've had with them. I'm sure there is some people that have potentially had bad dealings with them, but in the dealings I've had with them, they do seem to want the best for the athletes, and that's all they seem to want. So I did quite like that they came out and said, like, don't like kind of boycott them just out of loyalty for us. Like, do both, do whatever one you want. Like, I did think that was quite good they came out and said that. Yeah.
So this so coming up to Worlds in, was it 4 weeks time?
Yeah, I think it's about 4 weeks now. Just over 4 weeks maybe.
So hopefully you'll be back to, or you can be 100% for Worlds. I've got my fingers crossed for you, and I'll be watching. But what's the future for you after that, comp wise? What are we looking at?
Well, I've said it's most likely, almost definitely, my last ever under 80 comp. I think after that, next year, I kind of want to take a step back from your bigger comps, especially. I'm planning on moving up to under 90s and kind of hoping to do like one big off season, really try and bulk up a bit and put on some strength, focus on some weak areas like my deadlift. I think if we're going up to under 90s, it's something I need to improve on. I can get away with it at the moment at under 80s, but at under 90s it will lose me way too many points to be as competitive as I want to be. So at the moment that is a plan. I'll probably do maybe like Scottish under 90s and maybe do the Scotland Strongest Man Open qualifier just to see what I could do, and then for the rest of the year it's just play it by ear. But I did have a little niggle in the back of my head, like when things were going well and I was convinced that I'd be winning Worlds, no doubt. Whereas now I'm kind of on the fence. It's just going to need to see how it goes. But when I was convinced there was the small niggle in the back of my head that was saying, if you make it 2 in a row, why not make your only under 80 comp next year Worlds again and see if you could get the three-peat? But well, we're miles away from that. So it's,
you could do it.
it's one of the things, but you've always got the wee niggle that's like, but you could do this.
Yeah. No one's ever won 2 in a row, have they, so far?
No, I don't think MD's done 2 in a row yet. I know Tommy Lavelle came really close. I think he was maybe like second, a point away or something. Yeah. But nah, nobody's managed to retain it yet. So I'll be kind of devastated if through external factors I'm not able to give my absolute best and it kind of costs me. But no matter what, I'm going to go into the comp in the best condition I can get myself into regardless, and I'll just give it my all, and whatever happens. But fingers crossed that I can at least get a few weeks of solid training in, and we can go in a decent enough package that I feel like I can make people work for taking the title off me rather than just passing it over.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I wish you all the best of luck for it. And we'll wrap it up there. We've been on an hour and 15, so I honestly appreciate your time coming on having a chat. If you just hold on after this, when I stop this, I'll have a chat with you after it. But yeah, thanks for your time, Chris. I appreciate it.
No, thanks a lot for having me, mate. It's good having the chat.
No worries. I'll catch you in a bit. Right, just